Donald Trump is always where the cameras are when it involves making money. And today at Lowe's Island in Sterling, Virginia, he opened the Tennis Performance Center. Trump volleyed with Serena Williams, shoes off, coat on. Donald Trump showing he's got some game, some little. It's right there at the Trump National Club. Both are tremendous facilities. It was good to see him out there, and the fans seemed to enjoy it. And in the
I was bullied, but that's in the book. That's not, we go into that a little bit in the arena, but yeah, I was, and things that I had to go through now, people will be canceled for saying back then.
So when you see like a Caitlin Clark, what advice would you have maybe for her?
I just love that she tries to stay grounded, and she says she doesn't. What did she say? She doesn't have a social. She doesn't look at her social, and I get it. I don't either, and I think it's so important to continue to do what she's doing, and no matter what other people do, then if people are negative, it's because they can't do what you do, basically, and hopefully she'll continue to do what she's doing.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about this pretty interesting conversation between Bill Maher and Leonard McKelvey, a.k.a. Charlamagne the Devil, okay? And in this conversation, of course, Charlamagne is going to be on his racialist altar here as he gets asked about Caitlin Clark and other questions by Bill Maher. Now, I got to give Bill Maher a little bit of credit because for as Trump deranged as he is, he's probably just as Trump deranged as Charlamagne Tha God. I mean, that's the one thing that they do have in common, right? They're both Trump deranged. Bill Maher is not with the race hustle, okay? He is the one white liberal that is sane when it comes to these issues of gender, sexuality, and race, okay? He's a liberal, but at least he's sane on those issues, so it seems, okay? He's just not woke. Now, again, we all know that Leonard McKelvey is extremely woke, and Bill Maher asked Charlamagne about the hottest topic in politics and sports, so it seems, today, which is Caitlin Clark. And Bill Maher is going to instantly shut down Charlamagne, trying to peddle this idea that Caitlin Clark is more marketable than all of the other players in the WNBA because she is white. And somehow, some way, being black holds you back from being marketable, even though we have so many examples of black athletes being extremely marketable, like, for example, the athlete that you just saw at the beginning of this video, Serena Williams. Take a look.
But you don't think it's a problem that this young woman, there's so many examples where, I mean, black people are very marketable.
Well, ask yourself
and
this.
She seems to have been indoctrinated into this. They don't see it as marketable, so it doesn't matter how hard I work.
Well,
I don't think that's accurate or healthy. I mean, when people come into the league and they're like the biggest thing in college, isn't that a big deal?
No, because Asia Wilson was the biggest thing when she came out of South Carolina. That's where I'm from. So she was one of the biggest things when she came out of South Carolina, #1 draft pick. And she didn't get all of that. So what do you attribute that to?
I mean, you're saying that's racism.
No, I'm not saying it's racist. I'm just saying that I think Asia Wilson has a point. And I think sometimes when, black women say certain things, we should listen, especially her, because I'm not in her shoes.
I don't know. But why was Serena Williams such a big star? Because people like that. They didn't not watch her because she was black, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So where are we with this?
I don't know. I'm just sitting back observing the conversation, but I do think.
Well, you're in the conversation. What do you mean?
I'm not a woman.
You're in this conversation.
Wow. Right. Charlamagne was left speechless, okay, because he didn't really have a rebuttal for the example that Bill Maher put out there, which is that, listen, if what you guys are saying is true, which is that the WNBA is not marketable because the league is full of black women, then how the hell did Serena Williams become a superstar, right? Why was she marketable to America and also the rest of the world, and these WNBA players are not? It can't be because of race, because if you guys' theory is so correct that America is so racist that they don't want to support black athletes, black women, okay, in sports, then Serena Williams should not have been supported as much as she was, right? However, she was extremely marketable. She made a whole lot of money from endorsements despite being a black woman. Now, again, in the supposedly white supremacist country that we live in, right, according to people like Charlamagne Tha God and the woke left and all these women boohoo whining and crying, right, about Caitlin Clark and her racist fans, that should not have happened, Okay, it shouldn't be possible for somebody like a Serena Williams to go into a sport that, was not very common of a sport for black women to go into and to not only dominate, but to be loved, okay, while she dominated. And she was, in fact, loved by all of America across racial lines. And I'm going to tell you guys why. It really didn't have much to do with her skin color as much as it had to do with the fact that Serena Williams is a good role model. And she is currently enjoying her life as a wife and a mother. Something that a lot of people on the left, they scoff at that idea of a woman, somebody like a Serena Williams who's so accomplished. Why does she settle for being a wife and a mother, right? But again, that is a part of what makes her such a marketable person. Now, this is a point that I've made in my last video that I did about the WNBA, Caitlin Clark, is that what a lot of these black lesbians in the WNBA are missing, right, while they're angry, upset, and jealous over Caitlin Clark and crying racism and trying to call the fans racist, what they're missing is that what really separates Caitlin Clark from the rest of that league, generally speaking, okay, I'm not saying this is true in all cases, is the fact that, one, Caitlin Clark is very entertaining, first and foremost, okay, but she's also a great role model. If you just listen to any of her interviews and the way that she handles those interviews, she's very non-divisive. She's very focused on the game, and she is somebody that a lot of parents see as somebody for their daughters to look up to and to emulate, right? This is the reality. But that's not just the reality for the WNBA. That's the reality for a vast majority of sports. Like, for example, how did Michael Jordan become the most recognizable athlete basically in history, despite being black? Well, it's because kids wanted to grow up and be like Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan was somebody that kids wanted to be like. Look at LeBron James. Again, for as much as I don't like his politics, I can't lie and say that he's not a good role model, considering how, for the most part, it looks like he's a great father, family man. He works hard, and, he's very entertaining to watch. Kids want to grow up and be like LeBron James. Parents can point to somebody like LeBron James and say, hey, outside of his politics, okay, LeBron James seems to be a decent role model. Now, again, you compare that to some of these women you're saying in the WNBA in the way that they carry themselves. Ratchet, ghetto, unprofessional, right? Want to fight each other all the time. It's just like, okay, well, if you're a parent and you're looking at that, maybe I don't want my daughter to see this. Maybe I don't want my daughter to be exposed to this type of stuff, right? Because, again, this is not the way that young women should act or carry themselves, okay? I think that's what a lot of these people boohoo, whine, and cry racism and jealous of Caitlin Clark's popularity and fame, that's what they're missing. Now, that's not to say that none of the black women in the WNBA are marketable, but you got to understand, everybody, just because they play well, okay, or they're a good athlete, that doesn't mean that they're going to make a lot of money or they're going to achieve superstardom. Sometimes it's just luck. Sometimes it's just a combination of things that aren't really explainable, but you can't just attribute that to race, right? Oh, well, it must be racism. It's not true, right? So again, I think that is what the WNBA is missing here when they're looking at the popularity of somebody like Caitlin Clark versus the rest of the league. Well, it's because she carries herself in a way that is attractive to parents and the real consumers, right? The real audience here, which are young girls, right? That's what they're missing. So with that being said, Bill Maher also clashed with Charlamagne Tha God on another race issue, which is Joe Biden's race hustling. Joe Biden making a claim at one of his graduation speeches where he claims that black people have to work 10 times as hard as white people to achieve the same things in this country. And Charlamagne Tha God isn't going to necessarily agree with Joe Biden in regards to having to work 10 times harder, but he says that black people or black women definitely have to work 5 times harder than white people to achieve the same thing. And Bill Maher is going to take issue with that. Take a look.
One of the more controversial things he said to the graduating class that you have to be 10 times as good to get a fair shot in America. And can I read what Glenn Lowry and John McWhorter, you listen to their podcast, I think they're great, said about this. Lowry said, I thought it was the kind of speech you'd have given in 1974, maybe 1984, but not in 1924. McWhorter, For goodness sake, can we please admit the time passes? I remember my mother saying that in the 70s when it still made sense. It's simply not true anymore, and we should celebrate that. You agree with that?
I don't know if it's 10 times better, but maybe 5.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
You think you have to be 5 times?
Yeah, when you're black in America, absolutely.
In 2024?
Yeah, when you're black in America, when you're a woman in America, if you're a black woman in America, absolutely.
I think that's a zombie lie.
Why?
Because I just don't think that's America anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bill Maher is 100% right. America is not like that anymore. Okay, I don't understand why people are still making this silly argument in 2024 that somehow, some way, as a black person, you need to be 10 times as good as a white person in order to achieve the same things, when that's just simply not true. Okay, I'm gonna give you guys a few examples here. The main example is Charlamagne himself. Charlamagne, in my opinion, appears to be extremely mediocre in regards to what he actually does. Okay, his commentary and his analysis of, I don't know, politics and news and culture. Okay, extremely mediocre, but he is very successful, right? If Charlamagne was white, I'm not sure if Charlamagne would be as successful. I'm just saying. I don't know. But you can't tell me that Charlamagne Tha God is working 10 times as hard as his white counterparts, and he's not getting more benefits or the same amount of benefits. You can't convince me. You cannot convince me, especially considering how this dude has Me Too allegations against him and a criminal record. So despite the Me Too allegations and a criminal record, this guy was still able to achieve success. Okay, despite having things on his resume that, in my opinion, would suggest that, hey, nah, you not 10 times as good as your white counterparts, my guy. You not 5 times as good as your white counterparts. Again, considering how you have these things on your resume, considering how you've also been fired and laid off from, previous jobs. I'm just saying, Charlamagne doesn't come off as the type of person that is a workaholic or somebody that's had to overachieve his whole life in order to be more successful than his counterpart. It seems to me that Charlamagne's actually the type of person that, despite the knocks on his resume in his past history, he was able to achieve success regardless of his skin color or his race, because he was pretty consistent in what he wanted to do, even when it wasn't successful, which again would tell you that, well, even if you're black and you have a record and you have Me Too allegations, if you're consistent and you put in the work, enough work, hey, you can find some success. You can even become a millionaire like him. Now, also, again, we live in a country where we have so many different programs, so many different opportunities for black people because of the history in this country. And because, again, we have made an effort to repair the wrongs that were done in ways that, again, the woke revolutionaries aren't satisfied with, but you can't acknowledge that it doesn't exist. Like affirmative action. Before the Supreme Court ended it, we had it for decades. Now it has come to an end at the right time because, quite honestly, it's just not necessary anymore. I mean, you have whole TikToks, guys, a TikTok trend, and you guys can notice what the common denominator is here for this trend of medical school students bragging about how they had C's and mediocre GPAs and MCAT scores, but still became doctors. How's that possible? How is that possible in a country where allegedly, if you're black and female, especially if you're black and female, right? If you got 2 infinity stones of wokeness, you have to work 10 times harder. You have to be 10 times as good as the white person to achieve the same thing. Now, I guarantee you'd be hard pressed, because I tried to find as many TikToks from straight white men or Asians, right, bragging about how they still got into medical school despite mediocre MCAT scores and subpar grades. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just saying that in certain fields, in certain aspects of our society, I would actually argue that it's an advantage to be black, right? If I was trying to become a doctor today, yeah, I mean, I would love to be black, right? Being black would be a huge leg up. It would also be a leg up if I'm trying to get into an Ivy League, okay? These Ivy League schools, again, you guys have seen it. This is part of the reason why affirmative action was overturned. You don't have to be 10 times as good as the white or the Asian. In fact, the Asian, they're the ones that actually have grounds to complain about, hey, we got to be 5 to 10 times as good as everybody else to get the same things. They're the ones that actually have some grounds to make that argument. But again, when you look at, black people, Hispanics, that ain't necessarily the case when it comes to some things. Again, mainly when you talk about, getting into some of these prestigious schools, becoming a doctor, getting into some of these positions where, hey, the new trend is if you're a so-called person of color, if you have at least one infinity stone of wokeness, hey, we're going to hire you. You don't have to be just as good as the white person, right? You definitely don't have to be 10 times as good as them. You definitely don't have to be 10 times as good as they are. So again, I'm not saying that there are not no circumstances where, a black person may outwork the white person and don't get the same opportunities. I'm not saying that. It happens. But there are also situations where the black person doesn't have to work as hard as the white person and they will reap the benefits. It happens both ways. At the end of the day, that's just life. Because nobody's entitled to anything. Even if you work hard for it, hey, you might not reap the same benefits as somebody else who didn't work as hard as you or put in the same amount of work ethic. That's just what it is. But for the most part, the harder you work, the more you increase your chances of success or that you will eventually find success, right? And that is the overall point that anybody, regardless of your skin color, your race, if you do work hard, you will find some success. Eventually, you might not be as successful as others, okay, who you think you deserve to be more successful than or reap more benefits than they will, but you will reap the benefits, right? You will find some success. And in my opinion, that's what really matters. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.